Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Indie Game Movement, the podcast that talks about the marketing and business of indie games. I'm Andrew Pappas. I'm going to be your host today, and we're going to be talking about jumpstarting your game business. Now, in the current indie landscape, studios and developers often grapple with limited resources and are always looking for ways they can stand out. But standing out isn't always associated with creating awareness. So today we're going to explore what it takes to really jumpstart your business, from how to acquire valuable resources to avoiding costly pitfalls, so you don't just know how to survive, but you can thrive in a competitive landscape. So that's what we're going to be talking about right here today on Indie Game Movement. Hey, everybody, and we're back. And today with us, I have Matteo Uguzzoni.
Hello, Andrew.
Did I get that right?
Yes, that was perfect.
Awesome. Well,
Great
folks, thanks. Yeah, because I'm sure people know how much I like to not try to butcher names, but I do anyway. So thank you for that. It means a lot. So anyways, folks, we got Matteo here with us, and just lots of cool, exciting things we're going to be talking about. So a quick introduction. He's the NYU's Game Center Incubator Administrator. He was also the director, or I know you had a couple roles here, like director and academic coordinator too in the
yes.
What is it? The Trust and Play?
Trust and Play is at the European School of Urban Games. It's like an ongoing project. We have a summer school. And the first year I was like the director of a nomadic branch, which is like a lot of students around the world. And after that, we solidified the idea with this summer school concept. So now I'm the academic coordinator. So I help run stuff when we do the school. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And folks, it's definitely worth checking out, because from what I could tell, it's really amazing the type of stuff that they do at this program. It's very innovative and creative, and there's just so many awesome things happening there. And speaking of creative and just doing lots of other stuff, I mean, at one time you were also a podcast host, like for a while. Could you kind of share us a little bit more about what that podcast was and everything?
Yeah, that was actually a great experience, I have to say. That was in 2016. I had the opportunity to come here to the US for one summer. One summer. It was like 3 weeks or something like that. And it was after we did like a big project in Italy, a big game in which we were trying to mix theater with a real life game. So like imagine immersive theater. I don't know if you ever heard of that concept, but basically it's like when you go around a venue and there are actors running around. So we were doing that, but in a game space. So you were like, you have tasks to do, you're interacting with actors and stuff like that. And it was like one of the few experiments in that direction. I was like, and it didn't work well, by the way. This is like the short story, but like the name of the project was Codice Indaco. You can see it online on my website. But after that, I was like, man, I think people are doing these things, but maybe not here in Italy. I need to learn, I need to study, I need to talk with people that do these things. And so the summer after that project, I got myself 3 weeks off my job, and I had my company, so I could do that. And then I came here and I said, you know what, I'm gonna do a podcast, because what better excuse to sit down with interesting people that ask them if they want to be recorded. And so, there is a podcast out there. It's called The Playcast. And it's about people that do theater, interactive theater, game in real life, and stuff like that. So the space in between theater and games. Yeah.
I love that, especially that, like that connection, how you're like, creating that bridge into these, very different mediums and such. So awesome stuff. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Now, before we get into our conversation today, I'd love to get to know a little bit more about you. And we're going to do that, folks, by having Matteo here go through the Q-Box round. And for those of you who aren't familiar, I love the sound effects there. Man, we got to get a soundboard now. It's official. But yeah, for those of you who aren't familiar, the Q Box Round is just a series of, or a couple of random questions I prepared here for Matteo. So Matteo, are you ready for the Q Box Round?
I am. I like this section.
All right. Sorry. First one is, what's the most helpful or impactful advice you ever received?
So I don't know if it's something that I received, but it's definitely something that I'm applying to my creative practice. Right now, what I do, I design board games mostly. That's the creative space. And so when we were like playtesting the last game that is going to come up hopefully soon with the producer at the publishing company, we're like, I don't know, there is like sometimes when you design games that have like resources, there is like this starting point that is about scarcity. So you have to fight to get those resources to, like that point of view. And this producer was like, no, you know what? People like that moment where you can buy that thing. So let's give them more. Let's give them more things so they can buy more and buy. So this switching like this concept of like scarcity to abundance and having, if like after a playtest, if you ask a player, what is the moment that you like the most? And then they highlight like a specific moment, then you want to have that thing happening over and over again. And so I think add more is now a mantra every time we design something as like, no, let's have more, not less of these like resourceable stuff, because you're going to give more energy to your player, I would say. So yeah, that's one thing. It was not, hey, this is but it was something that now we are basically, and I say we because I always design with a colleague of mine, Jason Karachi, but we always like repeat ourselves, add more.
I love it. That's such a good one too. And it's interesting take on it, but with that additional context, it makes complete sense. So thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
All right. The next one is, name one thing that motivates you every day.
I have two.
Let's hear them.
I guess one is my wife. She literally motivates me, and I motivate her. But it's a great example of someone that really followed her passion, and she's an accomplished professional in a field that is like tough for women. And the second is like my experience as an immigrant in this country. Like every morning I wake up and like, you chose this. Like you could have stayed in Italy, in your hometown, or in Europe, but you chose to come here. So that's something that really motivates me. Like how many things there are here available, how many people are engaging with games and engaging with their own passion in a way that is like truthful. And to me, it's a thing that motivates me every day to like keep going and explore and meet people and stuff like that.
Awesome. I absolutely love that too. And yeah, I agree. My wife motivates me too, but that's also a very empowering thing too, that it sounds like you have a synergy between each other. And then also the whole, being grateful for that opportunity of doing something different and contributing to this industry and people and still in the creative space. I mean, that's definitely a really rewarding and motivating thing for sure. So thanks. And then last but not least, and the staple here on the show is, what game are you playing now?
Can be any game, or it has to be digital.
Any game.
Any
game.
Right.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, so I went to PAX Unplugged in December and in Philadelphia, and I got this game called Dracula versus Van Helsing, which is published by a South Korean publisher called Mandu Games. And it's an asymmetrical, I think it's called War, a version of War. You know, War, the simple card game that you flip a card and is higher.
Oh, yes. Wow. It's been a while since I played that.
I can imagine. And so it's like an iteration on that. There are like, but it's asymmetrical. So one person plays as Dracula, the other person plays as Van Helsing, which is like the person that in the story kills Dracula. So you have different goals. And I'm playing that a lot. And I played that on Board Game Arena, which is an online website where you can play board games. And it's a lot of fun. It's very mean. And it's very one against one, which is the kind of game that I really like.
Ah, okay, nice. So pretty competitive in that.
Oh yeah.
It's what we could say is probably cutthroat.
Yeah, totally like that. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I'm playing.
Awesome. Well, Matteo, thank you so much for sharing that information. So we got to know you a little bit more. And with that said, let's get right into our conversation today, which is jump starting your game business. Because hey, we could all use a little jump start here and there, whether it's when you're just starting out or you need something in between to kind of get you going and whatnot. So, to kick off this conversation, I need, I'm mumbling my words here again. Any indie developer or studio that, let's say, is, starting out, the journey can definitely be overwhelming. Now, from your experience, what would you say are kind of the first crucial steps they should take to kind of set themselves up for success in such a competitive landscape?
I really like that you use the they pronoun because I think my answer is like more than one people. Like it's really hard to be by yourself and creating like a studio like that. My feeling is that the first thing you need to have is people around you that are people you like to play games with, that you trust and that you have like a profound respect for. And I will suggest you, and I suggest everyone to do that, start this adventure with some ally, because if you're going into this by yourself, it's going to be very, very, very hard. And I think this is something that when I was in Italy, I was an advisor for incubator and accelerator program. We're not focusing on games, but like in general in business. And few venture capitalists told me that when they pick an idea or a project, they look at the team first, even before the idea sometimes, because the idea can pivot. You can change the idea after 1 year. Yeah. But if the team is not cohesive and is not determined and they don't like each other, or they have an shared experience together, it's going to be very hard. So I feel that, I would say, embark in this adventure with someone that you really trust, and you maybe share also things that are outside work together.
Yeah. And, I think that could go in two different ways, but let's say from a more business perspective, like you just said, it could be an investor. It could be even potentially a publisher that sees, there's a large amount of value that comes with a team, and it doesn't have to be a big team or whatever either, but it just adds some extra assurance, I would say, in other factors, because, going it alone is tough, is overwhelming, and having those right kind of people are important. And I guess the other side too, and I think you alluded this to a little bit too, is having those same type of people, but they might not necessarily be in your team, right? They're you're like, I don't know, you could be your wingman or a woman or whoever, or just another person that has those same characteristics, that has those same qualities of, respect and someone's that's still fun to play other games with, because they can offer a lot of different perspectives. And sometimes that outside perspective can make all the difference in the world and how you apply things moving forward, especially when you're overwhelmed trying to start up something from nothing. Yeah.
I think the word overwhelming and also diversity, you touched on a thing that is really important and dear to me, which is like diversity of perspective and backgrounds and ideas. That's also very, very important. And it gives so much energy and to the games that you're going to create that is like impossible to see before you start doing that something. But yeah, it's a long journey. It's a long journey, and there's going to be a moment where you're going to be the one, leading and, carrying everyone on your shoulder. And there's going to be a moment where you're going to need like some time off and someone else to take the lead. So that's why you don't want to be alone in this, I feel.
Yeah, because it like we said, it could be not just overwhelming, but challenging. And it just makes it really difficult to really, get anywhere and move forward. And I think it's an important point too, because, sometimes, when we get excited about these ideas, this journey we want to take, we might just jump right in, right? But also doing that and what we just talked about, in a way, it kind of somewhat helps establish like a foundation, a structure, right? Something firm to go with. And with that being the case and stuff, what would you also suggest are some, let's say, key foundations that developers or studios, should establish outside of just their team, let's call it, and whether they plan to apply it to an incubator or not? What are some maybe foundation practices or resources they can kind of consider to establishing that firm foundation?
Yeah, I guess, well, it depends on the history, and where they are in their career and stuff like that. But my feeling is that if you want to, there is something about being resilient, like being able to adapt in your journey. And I see a lot of indie developer and studios that they have maybe their own game, but then they have also they do consultancy work or they do development for others. And my feeling is that you need to be open to that kind of opportunities, right? You can have a strong vision and an idea for a game, and you're gonna run for that and do that. At the same time, it could happen along the way that you're gonna have times where you're gonna need maybe more money coming in a different way, because maybe, I don't know, the money for the main project is not, maybe you have an opportunity to do some side gig. And I feel this ability to also be ready to accept those side gigs or alternative way of funding yourself and your studio are something that can help you a lot in the long run. And they help you also because they basically make your community grow, and maybe they help you find the next person that is going to help you and maybe is going to enter in the team. So when I have, for example, money coming my way, I always try to redirect that money to interesting people that maybe I met along the way as an opportunity to design something together. So in this way, I have the experience of having worked with someone that maybe can become down the line someone important in my career. And at the same time, I'm growing my community and I'm being more resilient, and I'm being able to adapt to different things that they can happen in the 5 or 10 years that, I don't know, my studio is going to be running, right? So yeah, I would say that be able to adapt and understand that there are multiple ways to be successful, I think, in this space, multiple ways.
Yeah, I think those are some good comments I made there too, because, adaptability is huge. You can't just be completely set and firm. And in a way, having that understanding, that mindset is in one way, shape, or form or another, a form of creating your foundation. Because if you go in leading with, I'm just going to do it this one way, well, it might be, a straight and narrow path. It's not necessarily firm in the sense of a good ground to stand from, because maybe it's firm, but maybe you're standing on a very small pillar, which the second the ground shakes, it could just tumble down, right? So it's all a way of, perspective and how you look at it. And then, the resilience thing, I think that's the thing I love about indies in general, is because they're so resilient, especially as a community, as a group. And plus it allows you to do so many different things. And again, it relates to that whole adaptability too. But the last one, I think you mentioned community, and I think this is another kind of extension of that, is the network. Like a network, something that we don't necessarily think of as a foundational thing. And again, it goes back to the opening question, the Q box one, of think of not so much of a scarcity aspect, but in an abundance one. And if you look at just me, it's just I'm by myself, or it's just my small team, it's going to make it appear as if you have less to work with than you do if you look at it like, okay, it is us, but then who else could potentially partner? And like you said, in your experience, it's like you find interesting people, you trust, you have them, and then that's effectively scaling. So,
yeah, I think sometimes when we talk about community, we talked a bit of a a very simplistic way as oh, we like happy community or stuff like that. But if you look at community on a more economic or business term, community is your first audience, like is your first client. There is, when you do, I don't know if you're familiar with now it's slipping my mind, but like there are these canvas, the business model canvas. I don't know if you're familiar. It's like a canvas that if you're starting a startup or you have an idea, it's helpful to clarify the way your business is going to work, right? So you have like on one side, you have resources that I need in order to do this thing. What are the value of this company? But you have like areas in this business model canvas that are personas or audience. And then you have another one that is channels, right? And so you can look at it and it's like, oh yeah, my persona is like this abstract person, I don't know, with this age and like they love these things and stuff like that. And my channels are, I don't know, let's take an example of a bakery. It's like a truck that is going to deliver croissant all over town. Cool. That's my channel, right? And a network of bakeries that want my croissant. But like in reality, when you're like starting a business by yourself, you already have an audience, which is the people that know you. And you don't need like crazy channels because you can write an email, you can call them, you can, reach them. So having a community is important because it's your first audience that you can reach without spending any money on anything, right? So from an economic or business standpoint, to have like a strong network of people that are interested in what you have to say and what you create, it's really important. It's the difference between like a successful Kickstarter campaign and one that goes in a way that is like, like you have to have these, you have to be respected in the niche that you are working in order to get some beneficial things out of it, right? And it's not that you are exploiting the community. To me, is like more like you are part of this and you're adding to this community. So yeah.
It's like they say, it takes a village, right? It can't just be one villager that's farming and for everybody else. I mean, come on. I'm sure a lot of us know how, management games work. And if you just focus on one thing, probably aren't going to win.
No, no. Yeah. It takes a village. I like that.
Well, speaking of like resources and resource management and such, one resource that always seems limited and a focal point for people is money, right? So obviously money is important. It really is. But from a business perspective with games and studios and everything else, what would you say are other types of resources that, the developers may undervalue, but should consider to look for as they refine their craft or grow their business?
Yeah, it's hard to money is very important. I mean, sometimes we tend to think, oh, but you have time because maybe, I don't know, you don't have to pay rent or stuff like that. But that's money in another form, right? This is money that you are saving. So yeah, that's definitely something that is important. I guess other resources, definitely, again, if you know two people, you like to work with them, they have different perspective, they know how to do stuff differently from you, they're expert on, I don't know, music or whatever. Those are great resources to start with. I feel that other jobs that you worked in the past are also a good foundation. All the experience that you had on working on other industries, if you look at them from a business perspective and you try to get something out of it, they're gonna help you. People here in the US especially, they work a lot of different things. And I feel that it's such a great thing to get to know so many industries and so many things. And there's going to be something that you're going to learn from that. So I think maybe it's at some point, for example, you are working on your game like on the side because maybe you have to do another job to pay for bills and stuff like that. I will not discount that job as not meaningful. I think there are things that you're going to learn, especially if you want to start a business, even in that kind of job. So yeah, to start a business, I don't know. For me, I had 2 companies in Italy. We had a good run. We were like basically 8 years we worked together. One was a co-op, which I think here in the US is not that like common, especially in games. I think there is one company from Canada called Co-op that they are like horizontal decision-making body, and they do is studio. But yeah, it was like a lot. It was a lot of learning and a lot of asking every day. You will ask yourself, how are we gonna make money? How are we gonna like find our audience? How are we gonna like build this community? And it requires a lot of trust, a lot of trust in each other. Yeah. So yeah, I think I lost myself a little.
Oh, that's okay.
but yeah, I think I keep coming back to the people, because I feel that, especially in this moment where like you read about layoffs and stuff like that, where maybe, I don't know, you have like incredible talents that are reduced to number. I feel that that's a big loss for the companies that do that, because like people are the force behind everything. And so yeah, I think I keep coming back to that, because it's a choice to work for someone, and create something together is one of the best things that you can do for yourself. I see.
Yeah, it's interesting too to see how, throughout this conversation so far, the kind of underlining theme in terms of like foundation and things like resources are in fact people. And while we don't like to maybe dehumanize this, and it by no means is, but I think some people can interpret as such, but people are resources. They really are, because we make things happen, right?
Yeah.
We make stuff happen. We create things, we execute, whatever the case may be. And, those resources, they again, it goes back to like the whole network and everything else. And you said and people too. And it's not, we're just not talking about other people who can perform tasks and things like that. It could be influencers in this terms of, let's say, mentors, for example. And there's just so many other types of resources where, yes, money is important. Yes, it's typically top of the mind, but if you have the right resources, the right network, and you are mindful of these things, branching out more, like what if that mentor can connect you with someone else that is going to help you get to the path you're trying to seek? That, hey, they have money and they want to give you some because you have this idea, concept, and strong network of a team to kind of like, they see the vision, you conveyed the vision, and now these things are coming together. So what was it? I forgot who said it, and it's been said a lot, but sometimes people say your net worth is your network. I'm sure that's a saying that you may have heard before, or some of you may have, but I mean, again, it just plays off of that idea, and that, resources, they're important, but it can stem a lot in terms of not just having equipment, just not having, let's call that stuff, not having the stuff. It's all about having the means to make connections, the means to make things happen, the means to create.
Yeah. And I will thank you for saying this. And I will share that also being generous and say yes to things is another attitude that is going to help a lot. Like, I feel like if you're able to go to, conferences and stuff like that, you're able to play other people's games and just like spend some time with them in their world. And those kind of things can go a long way. And what you mentioned about mentorship, that's a big thing. That's a big thing. I tend to oversee that, but I was lucky. And actually, the podcast was one place where I find one of my mentors, and I got a job because of that. And at some point you're gonna be the mentor. You're gonna be the one with, if you want to stick around, if you want to stick to this industry, at some point you're gonna be the one that is gonna be a mentor. You're gonna be the one that is gonna open up doors for other people. You're gonna be the one giving back. So that's also another aspect of being generous, right? Which is I think the first one good attitude that you can have that is gonna like help you a lot in a good way.
Because But in that case too, if you think about it, if we go back to the whole village concept we were talking about, like that's one way a mentor is basically like refueling or giving back to the community so it can continue to grow further. And it's just, everybody starts to win and benefit from those actions and stuff. So
yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
Well, all right. I want to shift things a little bit. So I think we have a good sense of like what a foundation and resources can be. And I think it's great that we broke it down in such a simple matter too, because I think it's really easy to overcomplicate these things, and understandably so. But I also, while we're doing this, let's say we have these things established and other aspects of them too. But like, how does one go about defining success and sustainability? Because, these can be relative, they're dynamic and things like that. So with that, aligning, let's say, a developer's or studio's vision with their concept of success, I would say can pose some difficulties, right? How if that's not clearly communicated, it can cause problems down the road. So what would you say are some strategies that, incubators, let's say, use to facilitate effective communication to help ensure the vision and success stay in line?
Yeah, so here we can talk a little. I think I'm going to do a premise about the NYU Game Center Incubator, which is the program that I lead here at NYU Game Center. So basically it's called incubator. I feel it's like similar to a residency, but basically we select 5 teams every year. They have to be based in New York State, and we provide them with some money, with some space, and with an executive producer that is a person from the industry that stays with them for the year. And we also have an advisory board, which is composed of more than 60 people from the industry that basically is available for, if you have a pitch and you want to find feedbacks, you can send it to a person that works at Epic or stuff like that. So what is interesting about this program, and I really embraced this when I arrived here, is the fact that every team has to define success for themselves. So we have teams inside the incubator that have different goals for the year. Some of them are just focusing on get their business vision together. Others are, no, we want to get a publishing deal at the end of this year. Some of them are like, I want to have a Kickstarter campaign ready to go. So every team can define success based on their own schedule, and they look at each other in the eye and it's like, what can we do in 1 year? Because you cannot say, everyone has a different history, right? And my feeling is that it's a very long game in general. So I don't know if it's a myth that is a fallacy or whatever, but there is this idea of the indie developer that, has this vision that is so strong that is able to pierce through the noise and being successful. And probably there are 2 or 3 a year that are able to do that. But there are 300 that maybe they have different route to that kind of success. And again, I think is this idea of debunking the one story, the one story of the successful indie developer, which is everybody loves and stuff like that. There are ways to survive and be successful in the industry, and they are different. Talking about success, for example, one project that is now being published, I think next year, by Panic. The name of the game is Despelote, and it's a first person kicking a ball around game. It's a very interesting narrative, with a unique visual style. And this project was in the incubator in 2019. I was not here at the time, but it took 4 years to get from a good, polished, vertical slice of a game with a very clear vision to winning Tribeca this year and being published next year. And, in 4 years and a half, it's a long journey. It's a long journey to sustain yourself. It's a long journey to keep working on things. And so I think the success and of course maybe I can put you in contact with the designer because and you can ask him about what is success for him. But I feel that it's hard to define success because it's so long. And so probably success is like waking up one day and say, oh, you know what? Today I'm going to work 5 hours in my game. And then I'm going to feel that I'm okay for the day and I can take a walk and I will not and I will be serene and happy. And, so I feel that we have a very unique way to define success, which is like, your game is published, you are successful, you get a lot of money in the bank. But I feel like this industry, like a lot of other industry, can use alternative stories of what it is to be successful. And maybe it is to be like a good human being with good relationship and you don't suffer anxiety and stuff like that.
Yeah, I really liked how you outlined that approach with the incubator is really going in, and it sounded like it to some extent could even go a little bit further to an individual level, but at least on the team basis, it's like, okay, well, what are you outlining here? And let them kind of like determine what it is. Because I know sometimes there might be programs, whatever they may be, are like, okay, this is a goal. And that's fine. It's good to have that outline, what that one specific goal, and let's say a course is probably a good example. This is the goal of the course. This is what we're here to do. And that's the only path. But in this case, and obviously it's different, it's dynamic, going into saying like, oh, I want to be at this point within a year, or I want to be here. But if you look at the trajectories of those, for some people, maybe doing a Kickstarter 1 year isn't realistic for them. Maybe it's 6 months and they could have, or maybe it's like 5 years, who knows? But the point is being, again, adaptable and understanding of how these work, how it's within means. And then from there, doing that as well and having these goals, it just makes it important to know that they're dynamic and know that they mean different things, not just the goals, but the success aspect of it. And what I really love that you pulled out and that you mentioned is that sometimes we look at these things as, or you were talking about like even the day to day, like, okay, today, my goal, we might like say my tasks, my goals or whatever, but like, if you look at it away from something that's fulfilling and success, and I do this too. I realize that I do this myself where it's like, all right, you know what? I know it's going to be a busy day, but if I do these 3 things and then this thing, I will be completely on top. And yes, I know what the bigger picture that I might have and what other people have, but just sometimes making those small defined measures of success can help you then better visualize and connect with all the next steps that you have to that bigger picture goal. So I love that you outlined that and called out to that, because I think we forget the importance that even those little things that seem so pointless and, oh, it's just another day, can actually help and create impact for the bigger picture, the bigger idea of success.
Totally. There is this Latin says that carpe diem. I don't know if you ever heard of.
Yes.
Carpe diem. So carpe diem, we translate it with live in the moment, right? But the real translation of carpe diem is live the day. Diem is day in Latin, and so the real meaning is like enjoy your day, like get the best out of your day, right? Not the moment, but like the entire day. Get the best out of your day, and I feel that it's a very powerful message to like, oh, another sun cycle, and we did good today.
Yeah, it reminds me too. I forget watching it. I don't know. I don't think it was a TED Talk, but it was some speech that I think some like either a U.S. veteran or something like that gave, and it was just a simple concept of, making your bed.
Yeah. Okay. I saw that. I love it. Oh my God.
So it's just the simplest thing. It's like, okay, just know that when you get up, make your bed. And when people are like, I kind of feel this way too sometimes in general, but it's like, okay, so I made my bed. But then he goes on to explaining how like different ways to approach it, different ways to look at it. And yes, it's just making a bed, but man, it's so insightful and so meaningful. And I think that perspective really can help define better what success is. And while it might be a little bit more subjective in that sense, it really can help pave the path to making those next steps, whatever they may be on your journey, not as far apart from each other, a little bit easier to get up to that next notch. Now, you mentioned a little bit about, sustainability and things. And you know what, this is all something we as businesses, and of course, we strive to be sustainable. I mean, why wouldn't we want to, unless it's more of like this very different model, but it's like, okay, I want to build this thing up really fast and then flip it, sell it, whatever. We're not talking about that. I'm sure most of us aren't in that, want to play that game anyways. But, sustainability, it's difficult for any business to achieve, especially startups and things like that. So what would you say, because I think this is an important one that we tend not to think about too much about, but what would you say are some common pitfalls developers or studios should be aware of as it relates to long-term viability?
I think one we touched, I think both you and I commented on the idea of like being too strict with what you want to do, like having these like strong vision and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And that's it. I don't care about anything else. I think you talked about a foundation that is very thin. I think also you're making yourself fragile, right? Fragile is not like a thing that is fragile. It doesn't mean that it's not strong, right? It is strong because ceramic is strong. But when you hit it on a direction that the ceramic is not expecting, then it's gonna break, right? That's the definition of fragile. And I feel that if you decide that there is one thing that you want to do and that's it, you're gonna be fragile. And so maybe you're gonna be a perfect trajectory and you're gonna go and pierce through, but it could be that maybe at some point something that is outside your business area can pierce through and like you're gonna break. So I feel like one thing is adaptability. We talked about that today, and it's like there are very different ways to be sustainable and to be successful in this world. So be open to that. That's a thing that usually that can be common and also your story is your story. You don't have to put yourself and look at other people's story and think, oh, they are there, they are this age, so I should be there. And there's every story is different. Everyone is going to take the time that they need to get to where they want to be. The other thing that I think is a little hard, and I think is normal when you are a creative person, is that every time you start something, you want to reinvent the wheel and do something that nobody has ever seen and be super original. And I think, that's great. At the same time, I feel that personally, when I started iterate and like, I would say recycle things that were in my first project that were successful and people really loved it, and I took those and I did another project on those, that's when I started working in a way that was more sustainable in the long run. So not every project has to be the new thing. It could be that you have one project that is like absolutely new and amazing and original, but then maybe you take something out of that and you build on that, something that is like, okay, and it's fine, and it's going to be great. So those two things, I think, be adaptable and say yes to things that maybe you are not expecting, but they fell in your lap and it's good. And also like, do not try to reinvent the wheel every time because it's fine. You can also do a lot of things and be happy without doing that. And I don't know if this, and the last thing which I don't know is like very basic, but like a way to have money is also to not spend money. So to reduce your cost. I feel I cannot stress how lucky I am that I know how to cook. And I cannot stress how much I can save because of that, because, that's my culture. That's where I come from. But like, man, at some point it could be that you need to use those strategies at some point, reduce your cost. Maybe you have like, I don't know, a lot of subscription that you don't need. Like look at your your economy, yourself as a business. Look at yourself as a business. Look at your costs and look if there's something there that you can cut. Because I feel that there is like a moment in our life when we're younger that we're like, but then at some point, if you really want to start a business, start with your own personal business and see, okay, what are the costs? What are the expenses? Where I can cut stuff? Because that's a basic thing, but I feel that you should do that if you want to be serious about a business. Why you gonna cut, I don't know, resources from your business if you're not able to analyze in a way that is transparent and rigorous your own business, right? Your own personal economy, how to say. So yeah, those three things I think are something that maybe they're not they're not that common, but I think they can help.
Yeah. And I like the expenses one too, because I mean, that's always such a problem with businesses, I'd say, is your revenue is not your net profits, right? We got big numbers. And yeah, we're like, this happens all the time with lots of different businesses where it's like, we got like a few thousand, a few 100,000. Well, what's your operating costs? The same as my revenue. So how are you guys growing? Oh, we're not. Or, we're bleeding money. Or know your numbers essentially. Because I like that. But the same logic applies to yourself as you said. Like it can have a significant impact. And it's not like you're trying to be a hoarder all the time of the money. It's just about, being mindful of those things. And you know what, another example I wanted to share real quick where you're talking about like, hey, you don't always have to be innovative, but being consistent.
I saw that you were like,
Nintendo. I was literally just talking with a colleague about the same example for the same reasons that you just outlined here. But it's like Nintendo, look, it's like, they're probably one of the most innovative, companies out there in terms of the game space. But then you look at like their titles and stuff, like how many Mario parties are we at now, right? It's just slightly different iterations of the same thing, but it's all the same. And it just evolves a little bit and everything else, but they're not like reinventing the wheel. And yeah, they have some downsides too, but I think they have enough of it go. Like, I don't think Wii U is as successful as, other consoles that they've had as an example. But the point being is it wasn't to a point where it was killing them because they have a good track record of, they could adapt to those changes and everything else. So anyways, another good example there, I think.
I think when you adapt and you like choose to not be, I think you are giving yourself more space to have more innovation down the line, right? Yeah. I think Nintendo has been very innovative. There were like cycle of amazing innovation coming from there, right? But probably it cannot be that every year. He has to, as a creative person, I don't feel that we are robots that we just like, you just feed things on us and we're able to deliver creativity. Is like a cycle. So you need to have also some downtime and like some moment where you're not that smart, I would say, and then to be smart again.
Yeah. I agree. Because it's like, even if you have systems in place, the idea is if you have a system and it's a mechanism that can produce an expected result, that's a really important goal to have. But if you stick with that too long, it's like you might miss out on all sorts of opportunities. A great personal one for me recently that relates to work, I'm running some ads and everybody keeps telling me, and I agree with them, that, hey, you should only run to desktop because it's hard for people to go to Steam and wishlist. Well, I found a different way that incorporates not just running to desktop and being creative with that. And if I just went with the system that I know works and is effective without exploring these things again, even though I know I try it out a little bit. And then next thing you know, I'm like, maybe this can be done a little bit differently. And that sense of adaptability, I think, is important to all businesses, especially game creators and studios, because sometimes those little things and taking that step back from what you know to be true might not be true anymore.
Yeah.
So really interesting stuff. Well, I know we're coming on time here, Matteo, and really appreciate everything you shared. But before we go, and we talked about a lot here, and I know you touched upon some, but what are some like quick tips or suggestions or even advice you could share with our listeners today based off of our conversation?
So yeah, I would say make friends and you belong here. Those are two things that I will share with everyone that want to have a career in the game industry. You belong here. Go out and make some friends, play some games, read some books, maybe not about games, and yeah, build your community because they're gonna be your best client and your best allies.
I absolutely love that, especially number 2, because I think that one is so underrated. It's not for everybody, I get it, but that's so important. Read some books, not necessarily about games, game development, game design. Actually, I'll do a quick shout out. I forget the Kim something, but the book Up, Down, Up. It's couldn't relate to this topic anymore, but that's a good one, folks. I'm reading it now. That's a good one, I would say, to consider. But anyways, I second that point.
Check that out. Yeah.
All right. Well, Matteo, thanks so much for your time being here. But if people want to reach out to you, connect, learn more about the incubator, what are some links? What are ways that people can connect with you?
Yeah, so we have a page in the Game Center website, the gamecenter.nyu.edu. You go there, you look for the incubator, you're going to find the page. The open call for the incubator this year is going to be open on, let me see. Yeah, and May 7 is when we're going to have the open call. So you're going to start, you can apply from May 7 until May 20. So that's when the open call for the new cohort is going to be out. You're going to find all the information there. If you want to reach to me about that, you can write to matteo.u@nyu.edu. That's my professional email. If you want to be, updated on the things that I do as a designer, I have a website that is my first name and last name.com. So matteo.uguzzoni.com. And then if you want to reach out for other things that are not incubator related, you can write me at hello@matteo.uguzzoni.com. So that's my personal address.
Awesome. Well, Matteo, we really can't thank you enough. This has been so insightful, and it was just such a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Yeah, it was a pleasure for me as well, Andrew. Thank you.
Hey, everyone. Thank you for listening to another episode of Indie Game Movement. I'm Andrew Pappas, your host, and the show's producer is Mustafa Price. Show notes for this episode can be found by visiting rengenmarketing.com, the number episode of the show. Rengen Marketing is a consulting marketing company that helps indie devs with their marketing efforts. Whether you need guidance with your game's marketing strategy or could use a free marketing plan template, then please visit www.rengenmarketing.com and take action. A special thanks to Dakota Saab for Season 2's opening theme and Melissa Gellis for the new logo design. And as always, thanks for being such great listeners, and we'll see you next time on Indie Game Movement.